Hi, welcome to this episode of the Nafford Junction podcast with me, James Walters. This one's a bit different to the rest. I'm actually out and about. I'm near Leominster at on the hill just behind Croft Castle and Gardens, a National Trust property. And why is it a bit different? Well, I kind of figure that living a climate positive lifestyle is about having appreciation and care for the world, the miraculous world that we live in. And on my personal journey, I'm now at the point where I do want to spend a lot of time out in nature, connecting to nature and learning about nature. I've always done a lot of that, but I'd say a good chunk of my learning has been by watching documentaries on television, and instead of sitting at home watching about nature on TV, I want to actually be in nature and experiencing it firsthand. So I'm going to start to do more of these podcasts. I'm not in it other than my voice, because I figure that it's good for you to see what I'm seeing. And the whole reason I set up Nafford Junction was to help inspire others and ultimately myself as well, to live a climate positive lifestyle. So today, the reason I'm here, actually, my mum lent me a book. Well, I say lent loosely, so this is basically where I am. I've walked up from the National Trust, Croft, Castle and Gardens. I've walked up this blue route to this Hillfort. Now, the Hillfort's actually the reason I'm here. I hadn't planned on coming to a National Trust property as the destination. Going back to my mum kindly lent me a book which happens to have stayed at my house or with me for years and years, about wild places in the UK. So now I've got a camper. Actually, do you know what? I forget if I've explained that. So basically, on my journey, on my kind of list of wishes and visions that I've been planning with Arthur, having a camper and trying to live a lot more off-grid has been on the list for the last year, really, since separation from my wife and divorce. Obviously, I've had a few kind of major wishes, things that I wanted to do within life, and lots of visions, not spiritual visions, but actual real visions that I'd like to do, and having a camper was one of them, which I've now got the camper. So another life goal ticked. So I decided to get dust off this book of all wild places and start to visit a few. This is actually my first weekend in the camper on my own. Last night was the first night I did a wild camp on my own. I did do one with Arthur on Thursday near to Pershore. That was pretty awesome. So that gave me a bit of confidence. I basically left the house yesterday, even though I wasn't in the house. I was basically parked on the drive in the camper, doing work in the camper on the drive, and then also slept in the camper on the drive, because I've got it now. This last week with Arthur was a practice run to see could we live in the camper. So I basically have everything in the camper that I need to live. So I didn't actually need to be in the house at all. So I decided to stay in the camper on the drive. And I sort of finished catching up on work and decided to head off. So I knew where there was a lay-by up the Malvern Hill, and got there last night, stayed over. I was a bit on edge, tiny bit, but half expecting somebody to knock on the door and tell me to move, but in the end I had a really good night's sleep. And it was all good. Got up at 7:20 and set off for the first place in the book to go and adventure, and that was Ambrey, Hillfort, just near Leominster. But as I set it on Google Maps and headed off, I'm getting closer and closer, and the road's getting narrower and narrower. And in the end, it's a sort of tarmacked farm track. And I'm sort of thinking, if I have to turn round here, there's a dead end, then I'm definitely getting stuck in a muddy field entrance. So I sort of zoomed out on the map and saw that the other side of the hill is a National Trust property. And in the end, I've rejoined the National Trust today, sort of just thinking of the practicalities of the camper, and that this off-grid life needs to work for Arthur. Like, Arthur's brilliant. He loves being in the outdoors, he loves adventuring, but I definitely am the one that would want to go for longer walks. Whereas Arthur needs the same sort of stimulation that a 9-year-old would, playing at parks, going on treasure trails and that sort of stuff. So I figured that the National Trust, they are in all of the wild places, lots of the wild places that we want to adventure. Their car parks are well maintained, not going to get stuck in the camper. I'd read that sometimes you can actually stay in the camper in the National Trust car parks, so that's a bonus for sort of camping wild. And lots of the properties have playgrounds if you want to be naughty and get a bit of junk, cafes with cake, stuff like that. So yeah, today I've rejoined the National Trust. It seems like a bit of a no-brainer. It's as a single parent with Arthur every other week. It's £91 for the year to join National Trust. That's a lot of money for people that are struggling to survive. But I'm in a privileged situation where I can pay that much money. Feel very blessed, and that's a bit of a no-brainer. If I'm out lots in the camper, I basically now get free parking at pretty much all National Trust properties, access to the house. It's all good. It kind of makes sense for this off-grid lifestyle to be a National Trust member. So that's pretty cool. And actually on yesterday, I was sort of thinking, I can go anywhere. That's a bit too broad. I sort of didn't know where to go. So I think, at least as I'm getting used to this life, I can get the National Trust app open, and that they can be the destinations I go to, as well as discovering these destinations from the book. So there we go. So I'm panting a bit because I'm getting to the top of the hill. I'm going to sort of end this episode soon because I want to actually discover the Hillfort. But what's pretty cool behind me is an absolutely epic view. Now what I'm hoping... Oh, is that a buzzard over there? There's 2 buzzards. Now I'm not a bird watcher, so I don't really know, but they look like buzzards because they're not really twisting their tail. If they were really twisting their tail and almost looking clumsy, they could be a red kite, but they look like a buzzard because they're lazy, or either lazy or efficient birds, where they don't flap, they get an air current and just glide on it. My mum says she's to be reincarnated, she'd come back as a buzzard, which I think is a pretty good idea. So yeah, my hope today is that I get to stay in the National Trust car park, because also there's a good 4G signal, so it means I can work from the camper. But if not, on the way here I spotted a few places with good 4G signal that I could definitely pull over at. Which of these are the sort of considerations now as I'm driving around in the camper? Is there somewhere, peaceful, with good scenery, that's also secure, that I could stay overnight? Is there good signal so I can work? I'm very lucky to work with a guy who is all good, very, very relaxed. He knows I work hard and put in lots of effort and lots of commitment. but ultimately I can be anywhere as long as I've got an internet connection. So I'm actually coming to the top of Ambrey Hill, and do you know what, I think I'm actually in the fort. I'm going to turn around in a second and you'll see what I mean, but this looks a very strategic and clever spot to have a settlement. But look at this view. Unfortunately it's a bit hazy today, like a blue haze. Whoa. Unfortunately I'm going to turn around, it's going to go from epic to extraction. So look at this view. Unfortunately in the middle there's a quarry, but there we go. Now I was actually down there, I was on the road down there this morning in the camper wondering where to park, but the reason I'm pretty sure I'm in the Hillfort, Ambrey Hillfort, so I can see a lip goes around the edge, almost like a volcano. I've been to Tenerife and up to the volcano and drove on the road. The way you drive through the volcano, it's quite eerie, where you look around you and there's like a almost looks like a wall all the way around, which is actually the mouth of the volcano and you're in it. So this looks a bit similar. Whether it's man-made or not, I need to do a bit of research. Oh, I'm glad I've done this. So I drove through that village just down there, just to the left, that was the road I was on, and I pulled over and made myself a coffee in the camper. That was all good. I was going to go elsewhere, but then because I spotted the National Trust, I decided I would stick it out, park at the National Trust, do a walk. It's about a 3-mile walk up here to the Hillfort, and then back down and go around Croft Gardens and Croft Castle. So there we go. So yeah, the sort of point of switching out the format of these podcasts quite a lot is I still want to give tips and ideas to live a low impact and sustainable life. I still want to help amplify the voices of other people and organisations that are making the world a better place and helping people to live a climate positive lifestyle. So you'll start to see more of that on my social profiles, a lot more positive news being shared, but I also want to switch up the podcast episodes to be to hopefully inspire others to get out into nature, to be low impact. Obviously any emissions that we do put into the atmosphere, then always recommend using the Kogo carbon tracker app. Connect it to your bank or your credit cards and it'll tell you your carbon emissions each month, and then you can look at ways to reduce your carbon emissions. Obviously that's the best approach, or for the emissions you cannot reduce, then you can know your carbon emissions for the month and you can go to the South Pole website, search for South Pole Marketplace, and you can pay for emission reduction projects that are reducing emissions now. It's not about rewilding, which is super critical, but rewilding doesn't reduce emissions now. It will make the world a better place in the future. What we also need to do is reduce emissions now. So South Pole are one of the world's largest emission reduction project companies, and the projects that they invest in reduce emissions now in other parts of the world. So that's what I do. I'll pay for carbon offsets for the emissions I can't reduce. Long-winded way of saying hopefully these podcast episodes shine a light on the places that are accessible to us. Now obviously I live near Worcester, so I'm going to aim to travel nearer to my to where I live, and there are lots of amazing places, but hopefully getting out into the world, being more connected to the world, and caring for ourselves but also caring for the planet, hopefully that inspires others to do the same, and we can all make the world a better place today, as well as improving the future for future generations. So that's it for this episode. Thanks for listening if you've got this far, and thanks for watching if you're on the video version. And keep listening for other ways that you can help stop climate change.